All right, so this is our September meeting. This out of the way. It's always in the way. And so for the agenda today, we went through the welcome, we met everybody, and we'll have two speaker events. We had Court Hall, who's on the call, who's going to be talking about native plants and grasslands, which would be kind of a fun presentation. And then John on the call with us is going to present a climate video about climate feedback loops and the albedo effect. And then we'll go through our miscellaneous topics like we always do, and we'll wrap up the meeting. And so before we go further, we always do have a lot of web links in the slide. If anybody wants to get the QR code or the bit.ly web link there before we go on. Let me also put that in the chat. Sorry, 1 minute. Let's see. Okay, well, I put that in the chat. Did anybody else want to get the QR code or copy down the web link? It's in the chat. Anybody? Okay. So we'll jump ahead so John can do his event and then he'll be able to leave. And John, I have the web link here. Do you want me just to go ahead and start that?
Yeah, and then we'll talk about it afterward.
Oh, and I see Mark has joined. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Looks like you got connected okay.
Yep.
Great. Okay, we're going to start the video for the feedback loop. Let me go ahead and start that. Turn up the sound.
For tens of thousands of years, the delicate balance of Earth's climate has allowed human life on our planet to thrive. Today, that equilibrium is at risk as one of the most important cooling mechanisms, the albedo effect, or Earth's reflectivity, is threatened. At Earth's poles, snow and ice reflect up to 85% of the sun's rays away from the surface and back into space, helping to keep the planet from becoming too hot. But over the past few decades, this natural mirror has begun to break down as fossil fuel emissions raise temperatures, melt snow and ice cover, and reduce the planet's albedo. As the planet loses its ability to reflect sunlight, a dangerous warming feedback loop is triggered. The most alarming change is happening in the far north, where the temperature rise is causing the snow cover and sea ice to rapidly disappear. Don Perovich is a sea ice geophysicist at Dartmouth College. For the past 30 years, he's been documenting big changes in the Arctic.
There's always been this annual cycle. The ice grows, usually say for 9 or 10 months of the year, and then melts for a couple of months. What's changing now is the timing. The melting is starting earlier, the freezing is starting later. We have much less coverage every month of the year, particularly at the end of summer.
Global warming from human-caused emissions of heat-trapping gases, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and others, is increasing the temperature in the Arctic 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the planet. Warming is then amplified by the loss of albedo as the reflective ice and snow disappear, exposing the dark ocean underneath.
Say it's April and we're flying above the Arctic and we look down at the sea ice cover. It's covered by snow. It's bright and it's white. Now, summer comes, that snow melts, you get more open ocean, you're absorbing much more heat. Instead of reflecting 85%, you're absorbing 90%. And so you're replacing one of the best natural reflectors, snow, with one of the worst, the open ocean.
Now, instead of reflecting the sunlight, the ocean absorbs it, heats up, and melts more ice, exposing more dark ocean, which absorbs more sunlight in an amplifying cycle.
as those darker waters warm, they emit carbon dioxide and water vapor, warming things further. So there are several aspects to this feedback in the Arctic problem which are truly frightening.
Scientists have been measuring Arctic sea ice since long before satellites began taking reliable measurements in the early 1970s. By the end of that decade, the climate models predicted sea ice would begin to disappear with the increase of heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere. Marika Holland is a climate modeler from the National Center for Atmospheric Research.
So our first climate models were developed in the 1970s. Those models, even in their simplicity, predicted that with rising greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, we would see dramatic sea ice loss in the Arctic, and the Arctic warming would be amplified relative to the globe.
And as measurement techniques improved, scientists were alarmed to discover just how much ice had been lost.
The volume has decreased by 75% in only 40 years. It's just a breathtaking change in a very short time. We call it the New Arctic now because it's so different from what it used to be. The ice now is mainly consisting of what we call first-year ice, which is just ice that's formed in that one winter. And most of it doesn't survive through the summer, it all melts.
Studies suggest that around a quarter of global warming is caused by the loss of this sea ice. But if you factor in the melting of snow cover on the surrounding land, together they account for an estimated 40% loss in the planet's reflectivity.
The snow cover over land is very bright and very reflective. It reflects an enormous amount of the sunlight away from the surface, just like the sea ice cover does. And we are seeing reductions in the aerial coverage of snow over the land, just like we're seeing reductions in the aerial coverage of sea ice.
With feedback loops amplifying the warming, the landscape of the Arctic will change irrevocably.
So our climate model projections suggest that we will lose the Arctic sea ice cover in the summer months altogether by the end of this century. If we continue to increase greenhouse gases in the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels, we ultimately will get to a state where we lose the winter sea ice as well.
A sobering prediction, considering that ice has covered the Arctic Ocean for more than 2.5 million years. And the warming happening in the Arctic isn't staying in the Arctic. The air there is mixing into the global atmosphere elsewhere on Earth and raising global temperatures.
The Arctic plays a very central role in Earth's climate. Even if you just lose sea ice cover in the Arctic, the tropics will feel that enhanced warming.
This means amplification of problems the climate crisis is already causing. Crops suffering, food prices going up, wet areas becoming wetter, dry areas becoming drier. And as the climate warms, it kicks in another feedback loop, set in motion by the melting of massive glacial ice sheets. In the past 30 years, the loss of ice on the Greenland ice sheet has increased sixfold, leading to a rise in sea level. As the ocean rises, the higher, warmer water melts more land ice, raising sea levels further and melting even more ice in a vicious cycle. In the South Pole, the increased temperature is thawing the miles-thick Antarctic ice sheets that have been accumulating on land for over 40 million years.
Loss of ice over the Antarctic continent doesn't have as much of an albedo feedback because it's so thick. But as that ice enters the ocean, it causes sea level to rise.
If both Greenland and Antarctica's glacial ice shelves were to melt, sea levels would potentially rise by more than 100 feet. This resulting destruction to coastlines would uproot millions of people around the world. It would also mean the ice sheets would reach a tipping point, taking thousands of years to recover.
If we lose an enormous amount of ice from the land, reestablishing that is a very long timescale issue.
And if we continue with business as usual, the warming of the Arctic will cause the feedback loops at both poles to spin out of control.
The models predict, if we continue on the path we're on, that the Arctic will experience very dramatic changes, and that those changes will reverberate throughout the system, the human system, the biological system, the socioeconomic system.
With every country contributing to the problem, each now needs to be part of the solution.
That requires managing the world in such a way that we do not exploit carbon compounds and dump the waste into the atmosphere.
The emission of greenhouse gases is an example of a market failure. One business enterprise passing on the real cost of doing business to people who aren't party to that business. That is, most of the rest of us.
In every sector of the economy, we have the technology and knowledge to move toward sources of energy that do not produce heat-trapping gases. What we need is the will. We must stop adding fossil fuels to the atmosphere, which are warming the planet, melting the ice and snow cover, and lowering the reflectivity of the Arctic. If we cut emissions, stop deforestation, and regreen the Earth, we can slow, halt, or even reverse the feedback loop. Lower temperatures, regenerate snow and ice cover, increase reflectivity, and heal our planet.
You have all this heat in the ocean. It would take a few years of cold temperatures to get rid of it. But once you did, you would get ice to form again.
The most important thing citizens can do is to educate themselves on this issue and vote for politicians who take this problem seriously and have good ideas for how to solve it.
I'm optimistic by nature, and I become more optimistic when I see so many people that realize there's a problem. The pessimistic part of me says the longer we wait, the harder it gets. It's time to act.
Okay.
Well,
John, you want to lead a discussion?
yeah, as I heard say all the time, there's the cost of delay, and that's what they said right there at the end, is that we can't afford to wait. This is one of the scariest of the feedback loops, the way I see it, because no one really sees it. You don't see it happening in front of you. So we're just sort of hoping that all of our actions in every other area of climate change will succeed and the ice will heal itself. But I don't know, it's just completely scary to me, but it's not mentioned anywhere in Citizens Climate Lobby. I don't recall what happened at the UN conference, but does this scare anybody else?
Very much so.
But I guess what we do is all these other things that we fight for are a proxy for this. There's not much sense yelling, I guess, about the ice, because no one's seeing the ice. You know, you just got to work in other areas and the ice will come along, I guess.
Yep. Okay. Roger, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question? And then after you're finished, Victoria.
Just real briefly, I've been blessed to actually work in the Arctic. In 1987, I got to go on an icebreaker up to, because we were getting ice properties for the potential to put platforms in the Beaufort Sea. And this particular issue is front and center of my presentations, because it's one of the things that I was astounded when I looked at the time lapse from my career started in 1980. And that's about the time they started doing satellite measurements. and I worked with ice experts. So what happened is that it was through like about 2003, 4, the ice was getting small, less aerial extent and less thickness. But then right around that time, it started accelerating. And that's about when I stopped working in the Arctic, was about 2004. So when I came to Citizens Climate Lobby, I was stunned, to say the least, when I saw the time lapse and how quickly the ice is retreating. Like 75% of the volume is gone. And like she said, within, I've heard earlier estimates, within like 10, 15 years, you're in September, when the end of summer, there's going to be no ice there. The multi-year ice is already gone. So yeah, to me, this is one of the most disturbing things, and one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing.
Thank you, Roger. Victoria, you're on mute.
Thank you, Joe. I've got a couple of questions. Given that the ice melting was not a feature at the CCL conference in June, say, that I attended, what would be the best proxy policy change or focus that would roll into impact on decreasing the melting? Would it be just to reduce emissions, stop emissions? What's the best proxy policy to emphasize?
So this is Joe, and I'll give that my best shot. I think it's a pretty easy question to answer, and that would be our most critical key policy, which is the carbon fee and dividend. That, of course, would reduce greenhouse gas emissions quite drastically, and that would kick off the start of helping to solve the whole issue. Anybody else want to jump in?
Okay.
I agree with you, Joe. I think that's front and center. Everything shows it, whether you look through En-ROADS or any of these other simulations, the putting a price on carbon is the best policy.
Okay.
And not just in the United States, but also around the world, which you get through the border carbon adjustment.
Yeah. The greenhouse gas emissions is the root cause of all of the climate change. And so through research and study, Citizens Climate Lobby created the carbon fee and dividend as what we describe as the most effective, quickest way of helping to solve that problem.
Okay. Well, I'm still getting myself educated, and I appreciate that very much. My second question is, what does it take to get access to this film that you just showed? And I wonder if I could get permission to post it on my website, where I'm directing people who study with me to look at climate information.
Sure. So this video is not owned by CCL. CCL did not create that video.
Right.
The web link is right in the slide deck. So if
Okay,
you saw
good.
my web link in the chat, or if you got the QR code, you have access to all of the web links that are in the agenda for today.
Great.
And
Thank
the
you.
video is one of them. Yeah, you're very
I'll
welcome.
get it off the chat. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Well,
it's simple to remember feedback loops climate, and that's it. I think I asked before, did anybody see recently that long article with about 4 different areas that talked about in the New York Times that had video built in? It was sort of a version of this feedback loops and stuff. Did y'all see that about a month ago?
I saw just most recently, there was an article about a huge, massive glacier that melted in Greenland and broke apart, fell into the ocean, which I was just reading the article this morning. It said that it caused a 900-foot tall tsunami right inside of a fjord, which is a very small enclosed body of water, very, very narrow. And they said that that tsunami lasted for 9 days, going back and forth from one coast to the other coast, It lasted for 9 days. It's an area they said in the article that cruise ships normally visit. Luckily, there was no cruise ship, or it would have been completely swamped. Everybody would have been killed. Lakar, I know that you were waiting patiently. Why don't you go ahead?
Just real quick. I just wanted to thank John for showing this. I think it's a great video that we can use and show to external audiences. One of the things we're trying to do in Team Oil is to engage with audiences that are from the oil and gas industry, but you know, they're going to be receptive to things that are very scientifically based, and something like this would be an example of it. So just wanted to say thanks for that.
Thank you, John. Any other discussion before we move on?
Oh,
Go ahead,
another.
Victoria.
All right.
Well, what one comment is toward the end of that film, it listed 3 strategies for solving, resolving, preventing the problem. And they went by so fast, I couldn't even take a note on the 3. Cut emissions, increase green coverage, and some third. For people like me who are not scientists of this field, that's way too fast and way too little emphasis on the solutions to the problems that are being described so well. I'm a psychotherapist and I deal with anxiety all the time, and facts and information about solutions help people manage the anxiety that could provoke total distancing and cutoff from the problem. So I know nobody here made that film, but I think it's important to give more time to solutions, as well as to the very frightening problems that are being produced.
If I could, I think the third might have been political will, and that's really the key. Because, but I, you know, I'd have to review it again. But that is really the whole thing that Citizens Climate Lobby is all about. Because individually we can't do a whole lot, but so we need the political will to do the right things in Washington and Texas. So, and then I just one comment for Wakar, and it actually goes back to a guest that Joe had months ago, Chris Drexler. You know, I put something out on I think Nerd Corner and electrification about his presentation, because I had him come to an ExxonMobil luncheon, and it went really, really well. So that might be one to consider for Team Oil, because he really did a dynamite job, and he's added more slides and more detail. It's a just tremendous on lithium production, and even it gets into EV impacts on EV and battery technology. It's just really dynamite. So I don't know, that might be a good one for Team Oil.
Great. Thank you, Roger. I'll try to find it.
Okay. And actually, Mark on the call here was the one that arranged that guest. Mark has the contact details if you wanted to reach out to him on that. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. I know that Cord has to give her presentation because she's in kind of a rush. Let me share my screen again. Let's see. Okay. So Victoria, here's the that slide that had the web link for the video we just watched highlighted in yellow there. Okay, going backwards one slide, and so here is going to be a Court's presentation on native plants and grasslands. And Court, I'm going to open that up and you can get started on that.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, so this kind of feeds in really well. Please let me know if it's any challenges to hear me. I'm actually outside underneath a native tree, and it's breezy, but it's really nice to be under the shade. So green space, that was one of the solutions. And that's a solution for, I think, several of the challenges that we face with a changing climate. And so knowing your native plants, knowing what to plant in your backyard is important. And so here we have Greater Houston land cover. This is a map that used Houston Galveston Area Council data. It was made by HARC, Houston Advanced Research Center. And the image on the left shows 2010 land cover in the greater Houston area, and then it predicts land cover in 2040 on the right. And so basically, like, the point that drives home here is that our green space is being challenged because of development. And while it's important for people to have their own homesteads, to be able to live in a way that's important to them, they can do things in their own backyards to help facilitate green space. Tiny pockets, tiny prairie pockets, tiny forest in our backyards, they all do play a piece of our green space puzzle. And so Texas is like 95% private. And so what we do as private landowners is important to help make green space connections for our migrating birds and butterflies and other pollinators, and also for our residential fauna or animals. And so, and the next slide will cover what type of habitats or ecoregions can we expect in the greater Houston area. And so this map comes from Houston Wilderness, and it shows the different types of habitats that still exist in the greater Houston area, and like the general coverage of if there wasn't development, if there wasn't our economy, what would be here in more contiguous pieces. So again, these pieces of piney woods, post oak savanna, Gulf Coast prairie, marshes, bottomland forest, they all still exist, but they've become a bit fragmented because of the way we use our land, the way private owners use their land, the way businesses use their land. And so there are solutions for each of these different landholders, stakeholders, to make decisions about how they use their land. And in a previous meeting, I discussed how private landowners, namely ranchers, there's some really great incentive programs. There's support from many levels to help encourage private landowners that have acres and acres and acres of space to either do conservation easements or to somehow use their land in a way that helps to enhance their green space, to serve as a way to provide ecosystem services. And so since we've covered that, again, we're just going to focus on just what native plants do, but do know that private landowners, there's resources to help them make their decisions, and in a way that helps them financially to support some of their green space goals. So we'll move on and discuss in this next slide why native plants. Well, native plants provide a variety of ecosystem services. They host pollinators. They provide refuge and shelter for native wildlife. They help to capture carbon. They also help water to infiltrate and not just immediately wash off. It's not, they're growing in soil, so they're not growing on impervious surface. So impervious surface, like our concrete streets and parking lots, water's going to rush off, but native plants, to help slow the water down, can allow the water to infiltrate into the soil layers. And then also there's the aesthetic benefit. Native plants, they bloom. Each one blooms at a different time, each species. But if you pick a certain plant palette, you could have springtime blooms in April and May, and then a bolstering of blooms in July and August, even though it's warm and hot and there may be rain, there may not be rain. Native plants have adapted to the interesting climate that is in this ecoregion, Greater Houston. And so for a number of reasons, between aesthetics and ecosystem services, native plants really serve a positive role. And so to just call out what some of these resources are, one is called Your Remarkable Riparian, and it's more for the coastal bend, so Corpus Christi area, but it just talks about plants that are for the riparian areas. So maybe you know someone who has a homestead on Buffalo Bayou. This could be a resource of interest to help them understand what's best to plant along the bayou. And then the Wildflower Center is a great resource. It has a search engine where you can type in a plant and you can basically figure out if it is in fact native, and then it gives you information about it. So this purple plant in the middle, that's a Monarda, a bee balm, and it would say that it has a purple to white flower between the months of April and June. And then this flower in the top right corner, that's a liatris. And so if you put in liatris into the wildflower search engine, you would see that it blooms from about July to September, and it's a purple bloom flower. And so I'm going to put something in the chat right now that will also kind of help with some resources. Should you want to find, oh, sorry, that was a chat. I'll put something in the chat here in a minute. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And okay, so whenever you decide, let's say you decide to do a native garden in your backyard, soil is going to be very important. And so our soil is the starting place. It's the foundation for our native plants to grow. And so just be cognizant of what your soil conditions are. Is there good porosity? Is water being able to infiltrate? Maybe you need to go to a vendor such as Nature Resources, Nature's Way, the Ground Up. There's many vendors across Greater Houston that has compost. And so compost or mulch, that's a way to help provide amendments to your soil to help give it some additional life. It's going to help bring in some fungus. It's going to help bring in some bacteria. And then eventually you'll get different invertebrates in your soil that will also make it more porous, so that it's not this typical Houston hard clay, but it will eventually develop and it will be able to support your native plants. And then from there, it will support birds, and armadillos will come and forage. And so having a healthy soil is the foundation for our native plants. And in the next slide, there's just some images of healthy mulch and compost, and in the middle image with the hand holding the soil, you can see these white pieces, and that is mycorrhizae. That's a fungal association, and so that fungus is helping get nutrients to the plant's roots, and then the plants provide the fungus with some of the food that the fungus needs to live. And so there's this symbiotic relationship between the bacteria and the fungus in the soil that will support the plants. And so it's this very intricate, beautiful cycle, food web that our soils can help support native plants. So in the next slide, we'll dive into what are some ideas. So the next 4 slides cover different plants that of interest. These are from the Coastal Prairie Conservancy developed this. these lists, they're called the 9 natives. And so there's 9 natives for sun and 9 natives for shade. And the tool that I had just talked about, the Wildflower Center, that you can type in scarlet sage into that search engine, and it will also help you better understand light conditions. So scarlet sage is sun, part shade to shade. You'll find that several of these native plants, they can tolerate a variety of environments. But if you're looking in your backyard and just it's always good before you decide to plant some native plants is just monitor, like during the season, during the growing season, so about April to late September. What are the sun features? What are the sun conditions? And so that will help you pick your plant palette. What are the soil conditions? Is that part of your yard getting a lot of water? Is it getting less water? So those are things to consider before planting native plants. But also there's groups that have done a good bit of research to help like a beginner's approach. And so, like I said, these are 9 natives for the sun. And there's some brief explanations here about what type of sun they need, about how tall they get. Maybe you want to start this, but you don't want it to look like a forest. You want it to be in a nice contained bed. So maybe you should start with some of these plants that are shorter, like 1 to 3, versus something that grows 2 to 3 feet tall. I will say, because it's Houston, these plants like to grow. You can definitely count on some of these ranges of plant heights to be a bit on the shorter side, because these plants can definitely have a bolster growing season and they might get a bit taller than what is listed here. And then so just the other thing to point out is there's so much color in our native plants. Like you see a lot of color in Home Depot and Lowe's, and that's great, but our native plants mimic that same color. You have beautiful purples and reds and oranges, and every on the color spectrum, you can find that in a native plant. So we'll just continue on through. We can see some more additional species that are good for sunny conditions in this slide here. And then in the next 2 slides, it talks about plants that are good for shade conditions. And just while we look at these, just again want to reflect on like why native plants. Maybe your community has a community garden, and maybe you planting native plants here will help to add to the pollinators that are present, that can help if you have like an herb garden or a vegetable garden. Planting native plants will bring in pollinators. Or maybe there's a park that's nearby, and maybe this park has some initiatives to bring native back into these park systems. Instead of it being a lot of turf grasses that gets mowed every week, maybe there's opportunity to put in a small garden bed that is native garden bed. And then, so again, like I said, so this green space is a solution using native plants because of all of the ecosystem services that native plants bring. And you can start at the small scale in your own backyard, even off of your balcony. You can provide something beautiful like blue mist flower, and a monarch butterfly is going to just really appreciate having something that is delicious with nectar and energy to stop on its journey wherever it's going. And so there's no place too small for a native plant. And again, like scaling up, park people, people who own acres of farming, they can choose to go native to help be a part of our green space solution. And so I had mentioned that I'm under an oak tree, and there's chickadees that are feeding in this tree, an oak tree, and our native shrubs and trees and other grasses and flowers, they support caterpillars and other invertebrates that help to feed our birds. And being in this part of the Gulf, we're in a coastal flyway for migrating birds. And so in spaces where we have native flowers and grasses and trees are also very important. And just as important are grasses and forbs. This whole all of these different plants, they support native birds that are flying through and the native animals that live here. But behind me there's a tree called tallow, and it's a popular tree because it changes leaves colors in the fall and it's very fall like, but it's not native. And it maybe only hosts 2 types of caterpillar species, where a native plant is going to host abundantly more diverse species of caterpillars and also quantity abundantly more. And so just keeping that in mind whenever you choose plants, it's for the bigger food web cycle. So in the next few slides, there's just examples of what a garden bed could look like. Oh, sorry. So this is just wrapping up the shade plants. Some options there. And then in the next few slides, we'll just look at some garden beds that way, like you can have a big space or a small space. And so, sorry, Joe. Yeah, in the next slide. Thanks. So there's some examples. Sorry, I think it was delayed on my end, but this is great. Being here is great. We have some examples of shady areas and some sunny areas. And then we have an example of a monoculture. So Cherokee sedge is really great as a monoculture. It grows well in the shade and the sun. And then we have sea oats and coralberry. So here we have like a dominant grass that has really great seed set for birds. And then coralberry, which is more of a shrubby type bush. And then maybe you have an area that gets a little wet. And so using plants that like their feet wet, like in this rain garden where blue mist and juncus are, those are good options for an area that's a little bit on the wetter side. And then there's this carex, which is just a type of short growing grass. So, and then some Turk's cap, which is a shrub that can get maybe 3 to 5 feet tall. But these are just examples to just encourage you, like it doesn't have to be a big extravagant bed. It could be a small piece of your backyard. And it's also very contained, like, or maybe you want it in your front yard, but you are in an HOA. So there's ways to help contain these areas. They're like you can prune them back and make them grow shorter. And then in the next slide, there's just, I think, one more example of different beds with wax myrtle, which is a nice tall growing shrub. Maybe if you want to like hide something in your backyard, wax myrtle is a good shrub for that. And then blue mist again is a really good flower. And then something called sorghum, which is Sorghastrum nutans, is this beautiful tall fall growing grass, and it has this beautiful gold flower. It's called an inflorescence, but anyways, it's just very, very showy, very fall color. And so where can you find native plants? Right now, September, the best time to go find native plants. So in the next slide, sorry, I think it's a little delayed on mine, but there's a slide that says native plants to purchase. Fabulous. So the Houston Arboretum and Nature Center, Green Star Wetland Plants, and Houston Audubon, they are great, great resources for native plants that are sourced from Greater Houston area. They're grown in Greater Houston. They're going to thrive in your Greater Houston area native plant bed. And so there's upcoming plant sales, as you can see. And if you just visit those websites, you'll see that they, like Green Star, they actually I think have an open house on September 28th, or they're by appointment. Houston Audubon is having a plant sale on September 28th, or you can order online and like pick up on Fridays. Houston Arboretum and Nature Center has a specific plant sale in the fall and the spring. And so you can follow them on their social media platforms, or you can go to that link. Then there's seed. So in the next slide, there are some resources for seed where you can find seed to purchase. Granted, this is for like larger scale projects, but you can find smaller scale, like they're called the letter D for dog, D packs, or just like the smaller poundage of various different, and they have native seed mixes. So hopefully this presentation helps you feel empowered to create green space as a solution in your backyard, maybe in your community garden, maybe your neighbor or someone who you know is in an area that's a little bit more sensitive, like being on a bayou, and just see that there are vendors in the greater Houston area to help support native plants. There's also vendors in the area for soil amendments like compost and mulch. And even one pot of a native plant can help support one butterfly. And so it is all part of the piece of this big green space puzzle. So that's all. I'll take any questions.
Yeah, that was wonderful, Court. Thank you so much. Any
Thank
questions
you.
for Court?
What's your background, Court? Is this kind of a passion, or is this part of your, you have a horticultural background?
So my background is wetland ecology. I studied in Galveston and then I worked a bit in Louisiana. I work at a park now where we're installing prairie. And also we maintain a lot of garden beds. And so over the last 5 years, I've definitely have learned a good bit about native plants that are in wetlands. Yeah, that's my background.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Anything else for Court before we move on? Okay, we'll continue.
Okay, I'm gonna drop. Y'all guys have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Court.
You bet. All right. Bye now.
Okay, so on the next slide here, this is a reminder. I think most everybody has probably received an email, but we are having our CCL regional conference in Galveston, Saturday, September 28th. I'm hoping you all saw that email Susan Adams has sent out. So if you haven't signed up to register and to attend, the link is here in the web link. And so we really do hope that everyone here can attend. This is pretty much local for us. Last year's regional conference was in New Orleans, and a lot of people did attend that from the Houston area, but of course that was not quite as convenient as this one. So there's really no excuse for not joining this one. I'm going to go on to the next slide. Now, this is also related to the regional conference in Galveston, September 28th. Susan Adams is asking for local Houston volunteers to help perform some various tasks there. And right here, colored in yellow, is a link, another link to sign up for those. I'm going to open that, and you'll see what she's talking about here. So there's actually a whole list of things where she does need people to kind of help out, starting with event setup, sponsor table manager, registration desk, and then she's asking for a lot of people to work as room monitors during the breakout sessions, just to help make sure everything is going smoothly in the breakout rooms, and to assist with technical AV issues, or to call the AV person if needed. And if anyone is going to be attending and can help out, there's just click on the sign up next to each of these individual jobs. I'm going to close that. Any questions on this? By the way, there's another note here. She did also mention that anybody that can assist and volunteer there at the conference, she's willing to offer a free conference ticket. If you're not volunteering, that there actually is a cost to attend. So just so everybody's aware. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm going to continue.
Or what's that? It's a website, or is that an email that she sent? I don't
Well,
recall seeing it.
so she did send an email to everybody in Texas and the other states that are included in the Third Coast region to inform everybody about the conference. Did you not receive that?
I'm talking about the volunteer website.
So for the volunteer website, she did
was
not.
that in,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
For the volunteer website, she did not send an email except to me because she knows that I'm in contact with the Houston folks here. And so
Okay.
the web link is right here in this slide. That's where I clicked right there. And so, Dan, I think you may have joined a little bit late, but I did put the web link for the meeting agenda today in the chat. Can you see that, or should I put that in again?
Joe, I don't think it's out there. I looked for it.
Well, it's there. You may have joined after I put it there. So I can
Oh,
put it,
okay.
yeah, I can
Okay.
put it there again. Give me 1 second.
Wow. That's a Zoom learning. I had no idea you didn't get the full chat if you join late.
Yeah, it's only available for people that have already joined. So I
Okay.
put it in the chat one more time. Can everybody see that? Hello? Can everybody see that in the chat now?
Yes.
I see the meeting agenda link. Is that what you were
That's what I'm
adding?
referring to. Yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm referring
Which
to.
was?
Once you open that up, you see the whole entire slide deck and you have access to all of the individual web links in each slide. Okay, are we good on that? I'm going to keep going then. So now we're into the get out the vote activity. So everybody is aware that we're in an election year, a very extremely critical election year. And so we have a couple of activities here for people to help out and to make a significant impact. This first one, I've shared the same information in the past few meetings. This is our Texas postcard project. And this is where anyone who wants to volunteer, you'll get postcards and you can handwrite them and get them prepared for mailing out to the different voters who are basically, we're referring to them as environmental voters. And so they're interested in doing something to help the environment and the climate, but they're low impact voters. In other words, they don't usually get out to vote unless someone reminds them and says, hey, we needed to get out and vote. This is critical. So for anyone who might be interested in helping on this, again, the web link is here. And when you click on that, I'm going to click on it right now. That'll take you to a web page with a sign up form to provide your contact details and exactly what it is you want to help with. And then Bob Hendricks or his wife will respond on that. Any questions on that one? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Here's the next Get Out the Vote activity. So this particular activity is being sponsored by our CCL Election Engagement Action Team. And this is another way to help get out the vote, to get those environmental voters that really are concerned about the environment, but they're not going to vote unless someone asks them and reminds them, hey, get out here and vote. So this one has another link right here. I'm going to click on it. And this particular activity is for helping out in the phone bank to actually make calls. So this is the sign up form. It's showing the dates and times available. And this will continue all the way through into early November. But you can choose what date and time you're available and put in your contact information, click on attend, and then you'll be able to help out by making phone calls on the phone bank. Any questions on that one? Okay. Next,
Joe,
yes.
question. How are the voters identified? Do you know how
Yes,
environmentally? Yeah.
I actually do know. So that's a separate project. And when people register to vote, the registration list is publicly available information. Everybody can get access to that to request it and get a copy of who has registered. And that's true in every state. The information they have does not show who people voted for. That's private information, but it does show who is registered. And so through this separate project that was done, people were able to collect data from multiple databases and merge them together and find out which people are on the quote environmental database lists, whether they're part of the Sierra Club or whatever it is. So all of that data was electronically matched up so that we know which voters have an interest in the environment, and then also available is whether or not the voter actually, whether or not the registered voter actually went and voted, not to show who they voted for, but whether they voted. And if these people have not voted, those are the people that are being targeted for us to reach out to.
That is really impressive. I appreciate knowing that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Impressive.
Okay. Any other questions on that? So I hope everybody really participates in these activities. This is how we make a difference. Okay, we're on the next page here, which I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our other CCL projects, which is called the School Electrification Project. And so I'm actually working, I'm personally working with some students who are members of CCL, and they attend the Katy ISD school district, where there's one junior there and a bunch of seniors, and they agreed to help out and be involved in the school electrification project. It turns out that schools everywhere use actually quite a tremendous amount of energy, and a lot of that is fossil fuel energy. And so we're working with the students to work with their districts to have meetings with the school board and to create a petition and to get backing for a petition, to create a presentation to present, and to try to move the needle in getting the school districts to convert to electrified schools and reduce the use of fossil fuels. So I have another video here I want to show. It's a 4-minute video. And on this video, you're going to see one of the student volunteers that I work with. Her name is Amukta, and she's presenting and explaining why she's involved in this and what she's hoping to achieve. So let me open that up. And I have to get to the right spot. Let's see. Okay, it's right about
have
here.
really gotten into presenting and have had opportunities. Some of them were invited to present at Harvard Climate Week this year, which coincided just with our conference, but we had students able to present. So it really has opened up many doors for these students, and they've actually become pretty well known in their communities. All right, so now let's hear directly from some of our teams. First, we'll hear from Amukta from Katy, Texas.
Hi, I'm Amukta, a junior at Taylor High School in Katy, Texas, and I joined CCL with a deep passion for climate change mitigation, driven by my own personal experiences growing up in a community deeply affected by environmental challenges. Because down in Texas here, there's a lot of hurricanes, tornadoes, and our power system is very iffy, I would say. So today I would want to share with you why electrification is not just a technical solution, but also a vital step towards ensuring the well-being and future of students like me. So growing up in an area with inadequate air conditioning and unreliable energy infrastructure, I experienced firsthand how these challenges can hinder educational success. So during hot summers, our classrooms often became unbearable, making it difficult to concentrate and engage in learning. The lack of proper cooling not only affected our health, but also discouraged our academic progress. I have an instance where I was in a history exam for 3 hours, and all those hours we didn't have air conditioning because of unreliable systems. So electrification really plays a big part in solving these complex problems. So electrifying schools means more than just better air conditioning, basically. It means having the consistent access to technology and having healthier learning environments, and actual reduced energy costs that can be redirected to educational resources as well. So I want you to imagine a school where the infrastructure is very sustainable and students have the energy and focus they need to excel. Electrification makes this truly possible, and I've experienced firsthand that it can offer students the chance to thrive in an environment designed to support their full potential. So with my team, we've been trying to get with the school board and electrify the Katy area and our school district. And I have realized that electrification is very critical because it provides the foundation for a healthier and more sustainable world. When we talk about electrification, we're not just discussing the shift from fossil fuels to cleaner energy resources. We're also talking about a transformation that impacts every aspect of our lives, from the air we breathe to the opportunities we can access as well. So my thoughts about my journey as well with CCL and my commitment to climate change mitigation is rooted in these experiences. Truly, I've seen the difference that access to reliable energy can make, and I'm very driven by the belief that every student deserves the opportunity to learn in a healthy, supportive environment. By really embracing electrification and really taking those first steps into it, we're not just addressing climate change as it is, we're truly investing in the future of our students, our communities, and our world.
Thanks so much, Amakta.
Okay, so what did you think about that? Anybody? Any feedback? I thought she was an amazing speaker there in that video. And so it's a really good group of students that I'm working with. We meet with them every 2 weeks, and we're continuing through that journey to really reach that ultimate goal that we have. So hopefully we'll be successful in that. Okay, I'm going to continue. Moving on to the next slide. This slide here is it's related to that same Katy project that I'm involved in. As it turns out, there's a company who is planning to install some battery storage in Katy, Texas. It's a brand new project that's coming up for proposal. And this is actually the second one that I'm involved in now. The first one was in League City, Texas. And it turns out that sort of on the topic of permitting reform, there's a whole process that's required to get all of the approvals and to allow it to move forward. And one of the steps is for the company to meet with the local city council, right? This is not the city of Houston, it's way out in Katy. And so there is a meeting coming up. It's scheduled for September 23rd at the Katy City Council. And so this is geared primarily to our volunteers that are residents of Katy. And we do have quite a few of them, although I don't think any of them are on the meeting today with us.
I'm a resident of Katy.
Oh, who is that speaking?
Jody.
Oh, hi, Jody. So
Yeah.
I did send out a separate email to all of our Katy volunteers. I'm not sure if you saw that email I sent out. That was a couple weeks ago.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
So okay. And so if you're interested in this, again, here's another link. I'm going to click on it. And we are asking for folks that have an interest that are available to go ahead and attend that city council meeting to try to help support that. In the graphic here, they actually have the wrong date. The date they're showing is October 28th, but the correct date is actually September 23rd, 6:30 p.m. at the Katy City Hall there. And you can register and get more details about that. Also in the link right below that, I'll click on that real quick. And here are specific details about this particular battery storage project. They've given it the name Ochoa Energy Storage. And there's lots of information on the company website here. So I thought that was of interest. Okay, moving on. Here's one more. And let me just check the time, make sure we're still tracking. Okay, here's another one. I got this through Roger from a student up in the Woodlands area. And this is an ongoing climate youth art contest that they're having. Looks like they're having every year. Roger, is that correct? I know this is, I guess, the second year. And so there's information here about if anyone here has children or friends or relatives that are considered youth student age, not above the high school level, I don't believe. And so all the details are here. If they have art that they want to participate in this art contest, all the details are here. Roger, if you're still on, do you want to share anything more about that?
I'll tell you what I know. I've got a little bit of knowledge on this. I think this is the third year. It started very small, and now he's spreading it now to all of Texas, and I think actually it's going to be spread across the third coast of the other states as well. But last year he had celebrities as judges. Let's say Lou Gossett Jr., I think, was one of them. And he also had a professional golfer. Anyway, he's pulled together, and his dad kind of got him initiated in this, but it's grown quite a bit from year to year. And so it's just for students. And Roseanne Friedman is going to be one of the judges. She's actually, I think she taught art in high school, so she's in our chapter up in the Woodlands. It sounds just, I would suggest you just take a look at it. He has a really nice little website, and I think he also shows the winners from last year. But it's pretty exciting. And Paul Eakin is the student. He's a senior this year. I think he goes to John Cooper School in the Woodlands. But it's a really nice effort, and so whatever you can do to support it would be great.
Yep. Thank you, Roger. And the web link is here. I'll click on it. This goes directly to the website they have, and again, there's all kinds of information and details on here. If anyone here in the meeting knows anyone that might be interested, please pass that along. Okay, moving along. In the monthly newsletter that we got sent out on Monday of this week, we had some pretty good news articles, I think, and I wanted to share one of them here. If you haven't had time yet to look through our monthly newsletter, or if you did and maybe you didn't see this particular news article, but this is about specifically about the Republican Project 2025, which I'm guessing everybody has heard about, at least somewhat. And the past few meetings that we've had, we've talked briefly about the Project 2025 and what it means. So really from a high level, it's all encompassing. This Project 2025 affects everything basically in our life that's somehow related or involved with the government, the federal government in particular. And of course, we're a climate organization, so I'm focusing in specifically on anything related to climate. And so I included this in the newsletter that's sent out on Monday. And for those that didn't see that, I want to share this. There's a ProPublica news media outlet. I'm not sure if anyone has heard of that. They do investigative reporting, and they were able to get a hold of some of these training videos that were published by the Republican Project 2025, and they got a hold of some of those. And there's one particular one. It's very short. It's a 1-minute video clip, and so what they're saying in this video that I'm about to play, they're talking about how if the Republican candidate actually wins the election, the plan would be to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere in the government. And they talk about how climate advocacy really has an objective of population control. So it's very bizarre, very strange, but this is what's in their Project 2025, and I'm going to play that clip now.
What do you think about all of about the left's words and definitions in the environment?
It's a great point, Katie. They don't stop. Climate change allegedly is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. And according to our intelligence community, the #1 threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change. This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention to as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control, don't you? I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment. Perhaps not everyone will make that connection, but after spending time in the international space trying to protect life, I can tell you that this is part of their ultimate goal, to control people.
So that's that. Any feedback on that?
Sounds like a conspiracy theory that she believes in.
Very, very strange. The first
Yeah.
time that I
Overpopulation.
the first time I watched that video, I said, "Hey, this looks like a Saturday Night Live skit."
They also want to do away with NOAA.
Yeah.
National Weather Service.
That's right.
So we won't know what's going on.
Yeah. Anyway, so go ahead.
Real quick, I don't know if you saw the Yale study that came out on changing perceptions of the electorate, but the one thing that is a very interesting, it gives a bunch of charts and everything, but the one thing that was very interesting to me was the fact that conservative Republicans went from being, basically saying that climate's not an issue at all. It went from it went up 10 points. It went from 27% several years ago to now 37%. So it actually is going up on the I think that's more in the MAGA type, more far right. But that's just shows you that it's very, not that it's just alarming from the fact that there's just a solid constituency that believes that stuff. And I'll leave it at that.
Yep, very true. Anything else? Any other comments on that? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Share my screen again. Okay. Let me check the time. I may skip over this one. Yep, I think I'll skip this one. This was just another CCL created video that I call another oldie and goodie one. You may want to look at that at home when you have a chance, but I'm going to skip over that now. Something else really quick here. So I've mentioned before that immediately after our meeting, it always is the CCL national meeting and guest speaker. And so for today, that'll start again at noon Central, and that's why I'm always in kind of a rush to make sure that we end right on time so nobody misses the national presentation. The guest speaker is Dan, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce that correctly, but Dan Ariely, maybe, Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics. And again, this is for anybody that wants to join. The web links are right here. 2 different ways of joining to get the video, or you can dial in by phone. And kind of a pop quiz here. If you look at the picture of this Duke professor, you notice anything that looks a little bit odd about his face?
Yeah, I wondered about that.
What do you see?
Beard.
He has a beard on one side of his face and no beard on the other. So it should be an interesting presentation. I'm sure he'll explain why he has done that. I don't know the answer, but hopefully he'll explain.
I looked at his bio and he was in a bad fire. So I wonder if that's what it's related to. I don't know.
Oh.
That's what I wondered too.
Oh.
That looks like he'd been in a burn. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to keep going. This is another slide I have in every meeting, just to have a few minutes of group discussion, reflection. What can I do as a volunteer climate advocate? And so again, the way that I design our monthly meeting agenda every month is to provide interesting and real activities for people to participate and to make a significant impact. And so I've already listed those. We've covered all of them. And now if anybody would like to just mention a few words about maybe what you've seen and what do you think you might be able to do as a volunteer climate advocate. Anybody want to be brave and speak up for a few minutes?
So Joe, one of the things that I've put just as a note to myself is, to look for native flowers next time I'm putting some flowers in the backyard.
Excellent. That court had a really good presentation.
It's not climate related directly, but it's somewhat related.
I agree. We do have to have some fun when we're doing our climate advocacy. Anybody else want to mention anything?
I'm gonna make an attempt to go to the city hall meeting in Katy and try that out.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
I'd like
Anybody
to second what Bakar said, but I have some experience. This spring, I bought $40 worth of seed, and I planted all over in my gardens because I was determined to go to kind of a more of a green garden and native plants, and I was very unsuccessful. Well, lo and behold, I just ordered some seeds through the Houston Museum of Natural Science sells these packets, and they said the time to plant these seeds is in the fall. So if you're going to do this, I wish Court was here. She'd probably have a lot more knowledge about it. But I should have planted all that seed in the fall because I was very unsuccessful because I guess once it starts getting hot, if they're not already established, they actually establish their root system in the winter. I didn't know that. So if you're going to do that, the time is the fall.
We'll have a second opportunity.
Joe.
Go ahead.
I started composting on a small scale.
Oh, excellent.
I used to have a compost pile in my backyard years ago, and my wife made me get rid of it. I guess it was an eyesore. I'm starting small and getting used to it.
Thank you, Dan. Victoria?
Joe, the nonprofit that I direct is going to begin a series of Saturday workshops. The first one will be on October 26th, and I'll have PowerPoint publicity available to send you to include if you want to in one of the next meetings.
Excellent.
But the first one is on living in better harmony with nature.
Okay.
And two people who've developed a prairie project who work with me are going to come in and go through our 4-lot property in the Heights to identify the birds and the plants and the critters that are here and help us look at the different light environments and places to plant. And then Rebecca Verm, who's developed the Harris Health Gardens, is going to be our speaker on soil in November on the 30th. And she will actually use her instruments to look at the different kinds of life that's in the dirt and the soil that's on our 4 lots and talk about and demonstrate how to remediate soil for the advantages then of planting. Our wildflower patch is my 2 wildflower patches we've already mowed down, so they're reseeding. And then I'll after Rebecca does some work, we'll reseed again for a spring growth. And I would welcome anybody who's interested in the impact of yard farming or yard gardening on the climate to consider attending. I'll get info to you so people will know the dates and the speakers and the topics.
Wonderful. Victoria, if you can get that to me no later than the end of September, by the very end of September.
For that too. Thank you. Thank you for a good deadline.
If you can get it to me by that date, I can include that in our October newsletter that will go out.
Fabulous. I will
Okay.
consider that my deadline. Thanks.
All right. I'm going to keep going. We only have a few minutes left. We'll go through our status reports. Judith, you have anything you want to share?
Sure. So this is the sort of ongoing list I have of lobby liaisons. It is time for lobby liaisons to start thinking about getting together a group of people to meet with their legislators in December. The only real change on this list this month is Sylvester Turner is now the replacement for Sheila Jackson Lee. I suspect that will continue.
Well, there'll be an election, so he's one of the
there
candidates.
Will be, but
right.
We'll see.
Okay, and then on your second page?
My second page is, save the date. The December fall conference is December 7th and 8th, and we'll be lobbying around the time of that conference. So it is September, so it's a little bit early to start trying to schedule those, but getting your people together and talking about what you want to talk about is fine. I had a kind of a blast last year lobbying at the state level, and the Texas State Action Team is hard at work. There are a couple of teach-in videos from a couple of teach-ins that they did that I provided a link here. Ann Drum, who is one of the leaders of that group, sent me some background materials for the second teach-in. So I copied and pasted them from my email into a document so people can look at the background. There's a whole lot of stuff that you can look at and learn before you watch the second teach-in video. So that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Judith. And Court had to leave early, but she's our Grass Tops leader. And if anybody is interested in working with Court on Grass Tops, her email is here. And then for Grassroots, we have Mark.
Hello, everybody. There is a conference type event coming up October 18th. I don't know if anybody's aware of it. Citizens Environmental Coalition. That's a Friday. So I'm working with one of the organizers about getting permission to set up a table there. So if anybody's available and interested, contact me if you'd like to help with the tabling. I will say it's a little bit expensive. They're charging like $125, and you can get a $50 discount with a discount code that we received. So anybody in our chapter could use that code. I can send it to you.
All right, anything else, Mark?
No, that's it. Again, if you know of tabling opportunities or presentation ideas, I'm certainly interested in that.
All right, thank you, Mark. And then for the media team, and so if anyone is not receiving your monthly newsletter, I do have the web links here. But if you're not receiving it, let me know, and we can figure out what's going on with that. It might be in your spam folder. And for anyone that does like to write or would like to start writing letters to the editor of our Houston Chronicle, we do have a really great video with a web link right here with tips on how to do that. And then Mark, if you want to talk at all about chapter development and new volunteer work we're doing.
Sure. Yeah, we throughout the month, we get an email from National CCL telling us when a new member joins in our area, the Houston area. And so we probably get, I don't know, 4 or 5 of those a week, which is encouraging. So a lot of potential there for people to join us. So Court and I are reaching out to those people and trying to establish a phone conversation, kind of our ultimate goal. And I think that would help them feel like they're welcome and get them interested in coming to our chapter and helping out. So I did have a success recently with one individual. It's a little bit like sales. You make a lot of calls and you get one or two responses.
That's excellent, Mark. Thank you so much. Okay, and so we've made it all the way through to the end of the meeting agenda, and we have 1 minute to spare. So if anybody's in a rush and wants to join the national meeting, feel free to drop off. For anybody else, if you have any feedback about the meeting or other topics you'd like to discuss, we can hang on a few minutes longer.
Joe, could you say a little bit more about what that school electrification is? How
Sure.
is that better than fossil fuel?
How is it better than fossil fuel?
Yeah, what I I'm assuming that's the motivation to do that is use clean energy, but I'm not quite sure how that's applied.
Well, it's tied directly into the Inflation Reduction Act, where we want to electrify everything that's possible to be electrified and move away from as much fossil fuel as we could. And so many schools do not have any renewable energy capacity, right? Most of them don't have solar panels on their roofs or getting power from wind at all. And so that's what this is. This is a school district by school district project. I got involved in it very early last year. Been working with them for over a year now, and found a group of students that were interested and were motivated to try to do something about it. And so the end objective is to get the school district to start moving to renewable energy instead of fossil fuel energy. Out in the Fort Bend area, which is not exactly Katy, but it's on more or less the same side of town. Those folks out there still get a lot of their energy from the big coal plant out there, and which is a huge source of pollution and really causes a lot of bad health problems. So that's basically it. The more schools that can convert to renewable energy, the better off the students will be, and the better off we will be. This also includes sub-projects, sub-tasks of wanting to encourage the school district to move away from diesel school buses to electric school buses. And like I said, it's all encompassing. Everything that could possibly be electrified is really what's included in that project.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Joe.
Victoria? Yeah. Oh, Wakar, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, sorry. Joe, I had a question for you and Judith, actually. So there's a number of open liaison positions, and I think we've always had we've always had them. But yeah, every time I've seen that chart go up, we've had open positions. I'm wondering whether you would consider somebody who is not a constituent for any one of those roles. There's a person I have in mind who she's interested in looking into becoming a liaison. She's a legislative affairs student, a master's student in legislative affairs, has some policy background, and participated in a lobby meeting that I ended up leading in June in DC in person. So her name's Sophie Gormley. She actually lives in Washington, D.C. So it's a bit unusual. It's far from Houston, but she's in D.C. So she could actually meet with some of these people in person during off times and things like that. And has some policy background. Anyway, not to sell this particular person, but just as a concept, is that something you'd be willing to look into?
Judith, do you want to respond?
Well, I was going to say, you sort of had me till you told me she was in DC, but you could probably convince me that that might work.
Where Judith is going on that is we have had some other CCL volunteers in the Houston area that are not in a particular district for a particular person, but yet they did volunteer and they helped out to organize that. But at least they were somewhere in Houston.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of played that role for some districts, a couple of districts that I'm not in last year. And the hard part is getting constituents to attend the meeting.
Yeah.
And so if, you know, they're willing to sort of work with me to make a plan for reaching out to constituents and seeing if we can get some. I mean, maybe we should try one of the open positions and she could pick one of those and we could get together and talk about a good strategy for moving forward. I mean, that would probably help me too. I'm always looking for new strategies and she probably has more experience than I do.
She may have some ideas. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, it'd be great. I mean, maybe just be worthwhile just to have a call with her. So perhaps I could introduce you to, and
that would be great.
Okay. And then related to this also, and this is for myself, you know, just coming in as a Texas 07 liaison, and thinking about setting up a team to meet in the fall. Is there a way of contacting Texas 07 constituents and reach
Yes.
like 800 of them or so, apparently? I don't not necessarily want all of them flooding in, but you know, is there a way of what's a good way of doing this to find people that are interested
I now have access to a database that is probably helpful. I think we could narrow down the 700 to the ones who have been active for the last year, maybe.
Yeah.
Or done
So
something.
let me give you some more feedback on that. And Judith, I'm not sure if you're going to, if you intended to do the same thing I'm about to say, but in my role here with the chapter, I have access to actually the complete Texas statewide CCL roster. And so included in the roster database, it has the ability to export that to a spreadsheet, which has a bunch of columns in it. And one of the columns that they provide to you is the district of where that person resides. And so it can very easily be filtered on the specific people in a particular congressional district.
Okay. So is it possible, like as Judith was saying, to narrow that list down to those that have been active recently? So it's
So Judith, is that something you want to work on, or do you want me to take care of that?
It's something that I need more experience with, so I will work on it and I'll let you know if I'm failing.
Okay. I can certainly do that. I do that quite often, actually, that type of thing. But Judith, why don't you give it a stab and see how far you can get?
Do we want to suggest a district?
Well, Car requested Texas 07.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, appreciate it.
So just some other things you should know about when you get a copy of that list. And one of the main reasons that I am involved in downloading that list is for the distribution of our monthly newsletter. So one of the things I immediately found out is that for some strange reason, there's a bunch of people in our membership roster that have blank email addresses. And so I have to immediately delete those. I can't email if there's no email address. The other thing is that there's another column off to the far right, which is also very useful. And CCL uses some type of algorithm to determine how active each volunteer really is. And so the column has categories like, long-term disengaged, which means they're not active at all. And I typically delete those. It has others that are, ranked as highly active or medium active, things of that nature. So it does give some good clues as to how active people are.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thank you. That was excellent. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Step off, but I wanted to just say thank you so much, Joe, and everybody else that helps put this together, because it's really well done, and keeps a lot of work off my shoulders, because we used to do the same thing, and we didn't put together a meeting of this quality. I'll be honest with you. So it's
Thank
really
you, Roger.
good. Thank you.
Appreciate the feedback. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Okay. Anybody
So
else?
I'll try to get you a list by the end of the week.
Oh yeah, there's no particular hurry.
If I don't give myself a deadline, it doesn't happen. So
I definitely need it by the end of this week.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Before we go, Mark, did anyone show up there? I'm assuming no, only yourself.
Yeah, I'm disappointed. Nobody came.
Okay. We'll have to keep track of that, and if no one is attending, we don't need to continue that, having it in person.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll give it a try next month.
Well, thanks for attending, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Thanks.